Chapter 30 of The Film Mystery. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Ian Macmillan. The Film Mystery by Arthur B. Reeve. Chapter 30. The Ballroom Scene. Sounds of music caught our ears as we entered the studio courtyard of Manton Pictures. Carrying the bag, with its indisputable proof of some person's guilt, we made our way through the familiar corridor by the dressing rooms, out under the roof of the so-called large studio. There, a scene of gaiety confronted us, in sharp contrast with the gloomy atmosphere of the rest of the establishment. Kauf, however, had thoroughly demonstrated his genius as a director. To counteract the depression caused by all the recent melodramatic and tragic happenings, he had brought in an 8-piece orchestra, establishing the men in the set itself so as to get full photographic value from their jazz antics. Where Werner and Manton had dispensed with music in a desperate effort at economy, Kauf had realized that money saved in that way was lost through time wasted with dispirited people. It was a lesson learned long before by other companies. In other studios I had seen music employed in the making of soberly dramatic scenes, solely as an aid to the actors, enabling them to get into the atmosphere of their work more quickly and naturally. Under the lights, the entire set sparkled with a tawdry garishness, apt to fool those uninitiated into the secrets of photography. On the screen, colours which now seemed dull and flat would take on a soft richness and a delicacy characteristic of the society in which Kauf's characters were supposed to move. Obviously fragile scenery would seem as heavy and substantial as the walls and beams of the finest old mansion. Even the inferior materials in the gowns of most of the girls would photograph as well as the most expensive silk. In fact, by long experience, many of the extra girls had learned to counterfeit the latest fashions at a cost ridiculous by comparison. Kennedy approached Kauf, then returned to us. He asks us to wait until he gets this one big scene. It's the climax of the picture, really. The unmasking of the Black Terror. If we interrupt now, he loses the result of half a day of preparation. He may lose more than that, muttered Mackay, and I wondered just whom the district attorney suspected. Is everyone here? I asked. All 7? Gordon and Shirley of the men, and Marilyn and Enid, of course, were out on the floor of the supposed ballroom. Gordon I recognized, because I remembered that he was to wear the garb of a monk. Marilyn was easily picked out, although the vivacity that she assumed seemed unnatural now that we knew her as well as we did. Her costume was a glamorous yama-yama creation of a faint yellow which would photograph dazzling white, revealing trim stockinged ankles and slender bare arms, framing face and eyes dancing with merriment and maliciousness. Unquestionably she was the prettiest girl beneath the arcs, never to be suspected as the woman who had braved the terrors of a film fire to rescue the man she loved. Enid was stately and serene in the gown of Marie Antoinette. In the bright glare her features took on a round innocence, and she was as successful in portraying sweetness as Marilyn was in the simulation of the mocking evil of the vampire. Shirley interested me the most, however. I wondered if Kennedy still eliminated him in guessing at the identity of the criminal. I called to mind the heavy man's presence in the basement at the time of the explosion, and McGroarty's information that he had been hanging about that part of the studio for some time previously. Someone had planted a cigarette case and stubbed to implicate Gordon, according to Kennedy's theory. Shirley certainly had had opportunity to steal the towel from the locker, as well as to point suspicion towards the leading man. In the midst of my reverie, Shirley approached and passed us. He was in the garb of Mephisto. Like the others, he had not yet masked his face. A peculiar brightness in his eyes struck me, and I nudged Kennedy. "Belladonna," Kennedy explained when he was beyond earshot. "Oh," I remembered. Enid told him to use it. "What?" I repeated the conversation as near I could reconstruct it. That's a new cure for smoke-burned eyes. No cure at all." I was unable to get any more out of Kennedy, however. Manton I detected in the background with Phelps. The two men were arguing, as always, and it was evident that the banker was accomplishing nothing by this constant hanging about the studio. Where previously my sympathy had been with Phelps entirely, now I realized that the promoter had won me. Indeed, Manton's interest in all the affairs of picture-making at this plant had been far too sincere and earnest to permit the belief that he was seeking to wreck the company or to double-cross his backer. Millard entered the studio as I glanced about for him. He handed some sheets to Kauf and then turned to leave. I attracted Kennedy's attention. "You don't want Millard to get away," I whispered. Kennedy sent Mackay to stop him. The author accompanied the district attorney willingly. "Yes, Mr. Kennedy?" "As soon as this scene is over, we're going down to the projection room. Everyone concerned in the death of Miss Lamar and of Mr. Werner." The scenario writer looked up quickly. Do you know who it is?" he asked soberly. "Not exactly, but I will identify the guilty person just as soon as we are assembled down in front of the screen." Shirley had left the studio floor, apparently to go to his dressing room. Now I noticed that he returned, and passed close just in time to hear Millard's question and Kennedy's answer. His eyes dilated. As he turned away, his face fell. He went on into the set, but his legs seemed to wobble beneath him. I was sure it was more than the weakness resulting from his experience in the fire. Kauf's voice, through the megaphone, echoed suddenly from wall to wall, reverberating beneath the roof. "All ready! Everyone in the set! Masks on! Take your places!" At a signal, the orchestra struck up, and the couples started to dance. It was a wonderfully colourful scene, and I saw that Kauf proposed to rehearse it thoroughly, doing it over and over without the cameras until every detail reached a practised perfection. In this I was certain he achieved results superior to Werner's slapdash and bang. Then came the call for action. "Camera!" Kauf began to bob up and down. "Into it, everybody!" For fascination and charm, this far exceeded the banquet scene which we had witnessed in the taking previously. The music was surprisingly good, so that it was impossible for the people not to get into the swing, and the result was a riotous swirling of gracefully dancing pairs. The girls, selected for their beauty, flashing half-revealed faces toward the camera, displaying eyes which twinkled through their masks in mockery at a wholly ineffectual attempt at concealment. Enid maintained her stately carriage, but made full use of the dazzling whiteness of her teeth. Early she permitted the attentions of the cowled monk whom she knew to be her lover. Marilyn was everywhere, making mischief the best she could. Shirley stalked about in his satanic red, which would photograph black, and appear even more sombre on the screen. Of course, the whole was not photographed in a continuous strip from one camera position. I saw that Kauf made several long shots to catch the general atmosphere. Then he made close-up scenes of all the principals and of some of the best appearing extras. At one time he ordered a panorama effect, in which the cameras panned, swept from one side to the other, giving a succession of faces at close range. Finally, everything was ready for the climax. Shirley had been playing a sort of Jekyll and Hyde role, in which he was at once the young lawyer friend of Enid and the Black Terror. Unmasked and cornered at this function of a society terrified by the dread unknown menace, He was to make the transformation directly before the eyes of everyone, using the mythical drug which changed him from a